What's going on, guys? MMA Island team. We are here with the main event of the evening.
Do it. Oh,
Not even going to do it.
Do it.
I'm not going to do it. We'll leave it to Bruce Buffer because it's actually Bruce Buffer this time.
Fine.
So, plus it's also 4 a.m. where I am right here. So, we're gonna leave it to Bruce Buffer. We're gonna leave it to the cage, the small octagon. It's everything everyone's been talking about because we have one of the all trilogies have been great. All the trilogies you could point out in the UFC have just been absolutely amazing. The first 2 fights of these guys have just been absolutely amazing. And there's so many things that lead into this. I'm kind of thankful I'm not going first here. So we'll pass it on to Zach for Daniel Cormier, Stipe Miocic, heavyweight championship. Let's get into it. There you go, Zach.
All right. Oh, you said let's get into it. Don't do that. Anyways, let's get into the analysis. I missed it there. This is the most important UFC heavyweight fight of all time. It's that big. It is huge. I won't say it's the greatest heavyweight fight of all time because, there's a lot of Fedor classics that you can throw in there. But this fight, you think about the magnitude of this. Like, this is Stipe's crowning moment to prove that he's the greatest UFC heavyweight, the greatest UFC heavyweight to ever live. Also, I think that the arguments that DC is the greatest heavyweight to ever live is absolutely ridiculous. He doesn't have the resume at heavyweight, even if he wins this fight. But let's just get into the analysis here. Daniel Cormier in both of those fights have looked impressive. Obviously, in his first fight with Miocic, he knocked him out. And then he thought that he was a volume striker against Miocic in the second fight. He thought, hey, wait a minute. I'm not an Olympian wrestler. No. I'm a volume striker. And so he goes on and just says, you know what? Let me just set the record for most significant strikes landed in a heavyweight fight. This is not what Daniel Cormier does. That's not what he usually, and the fact that he only attempted 3 takedowns in that fight, it's just odd to me. And I'm listening to a bunch of interviews of Cormier leading up to this fight, and he says that he's going to use all his tools to win. And that means one thing. He's going to bring out the wrestling. And no one in the heavyweight division, I think, to ever live can stop the wrestling of Daniel Cormier. Hell no, and especially not Stipe Miocic. Now, I have the utmost respect for Stipe Miocic. I believe he's one of the most well-rounded heavyweights the world has ever seen, and I do think that he is the greatest heavyweight of all time, win or lose. His resume is absolutely fantastic. And the one thing that really stands out to me about Miocic is that his best quality is his fight IQ. He is an absolute genius when it comes to fight IQ and how he listens to his coaches and applies those adjustments mid-fight. He's the only person really to crack the puzzle of Ngannou. Not Francis Ngannou, the actual version of Ngannou, not the one that fought Derek Lewis. That fight doesn't count. That one never happened. Going into the Miocic fight, that was prime Ngannou. Miocic figured him out because he is an absolute genius. And then in the fight with Cormier, he was losing. He was kind of getting beat pillar to post, right? He was getting landed on repeatedly, but he makes that adjustment. Go to the body. And it worked. That's what got him the win. But don't you think DC is going to expect that this time around? He definitely is. That's probably what he's been training. And if you think, well, maybe DC wants to abandon his wrestling, look at who he brought in to train with. He brought in his old AKA crew of Cain Velasquez, Luke Rockhold, and Corey Anderson. You train with those 3 guys, you are absolutely going to drill your wrestling. Now, I think I've laid out the analysis a bit enough, and I'm going into my prediction for this fight. I think that Daniel Cormier is going to win. I think that if he uses his wrestling like he says he is going to do, he is absolutely going to walk away with the heavyweight title and ride off into the sunset. And man, wouldn't that be that? I think that also DC knows that this fight is for his legacy. Like, if he wins this fight, he goes down as one of the GOATs. Not one of the greatest heavyweights, just one of the greatest fighters of all time. Because this is his last fight. And I know people say that retired fighters are already 1 foot out the door, but I don't believe that with Cormier. I believe that he knows he is not going to let himself go out on that loss to Miocic. He's not going to let himself that's going to be his image in the minds of MMA fans. No, he's going to make sure his image is the one of him raising the belt, beating Miocic this time, because I don't know what other adjustments Stipe can make. He found that one. That was the gold mine. He hit gold. But now that I assume that Daniel Cormier has patched that up, what else can he do, especially if DC uses the wrestling? So that's why I'm picking DC going into this fight, because if he truly uses all of his tools, I don't see a way he can lose.
Yeah. So I'm gonna start this off before I get into my analysis for this fight, and I will say that this is my lock of the event of UFC
Wow.
252.
Wow.
Now, before I mention who I'm picking here, I've picked the two DC Stipe fights correct. I picked the first one for DC, and I picked the second one for Stipe. I wasn't so much of an MMA statistics and analytics, and I didn't go too much into it as much as I do now. The first one, I just said, DC's moving up, and I think he gets a double belt. I just think he's going to be able to do it. I don't know how. I think he's got the ground game advantage. I think he's going to be able to do it. Second one, again, I don't even know why I picked him for the second one. I was just like, I think Stiopic's going to fucking wreck him, as Joey Diaz says. I had to throw that one in there. One of my favorite lines ever to say. But
Nice.
in this one, UFC 252, Daniel Cormier's last fight in the UFC in MMA, I don't think Stiopic's going to fucking wreck him. I think I got Daniel Cormier here for multiple reasons. Let me lead into it. So, Daniel Cormier, the things that we know about him, we know that this dude can strike. We know this dude is a very, very, very dominant wrestler. The thing with the striking thing, and you touched on it a little bit in the second fight, we didn't even need to see it. Like, you knocked him out the first fight. The second fight, he was beating him on the ground. The first round where he picked him up and threw him over his shoulder like he was like a chunk of log or whatever, and he just like slammed him back down. He was winning. He was winning the fight. And it was tough to say. So, yeah, I have the scorecards for the second fight. So what? They gave it to so they gave the last round was split. Derek Cleary scored it all three first rounds for Daniel Cormier. So if you count that, the 4 full rounds we've had, or no, I guess not four full rounds. If you count the first fight, the first round, the 1, 2, 3, and 4 of Miocic Cormier, you could say Cormier won the majority of all of those, because you'd be right to say that. Going to the statistics for the striking differential, Cormier was 67%, landed 67% of his significant strikes in the first fight. Stipe Miocic landed 47%. The second fight, Daniel Cormier landed 68% of his strikes. Stipe Miocic landed 53%. And if you talk about Daniel Cormier and you know how good of a wrestler he is, which I think a lot of people do, you mention how he's able to get these takedowns and kind of take the fight to the ground where you know he's better. And to say that Daniel Cormier attempted three strikes and got one in
Three
both
takedowns.
of the
Strikes.
fights. Yeah, takedowns. Yeah, I meant takedowns. Attempted 3 takedowns in 2 fights against Stipe Miocic. And man, chills go through my body when I hear Daniel Cormier say that he's gonna delve into, like, use all of his tools and throw everything he's got at him, and he is just so confident that he's going to beat Stipe. And I think, as you mentioned, if we're going to piece the puzzle as to what that means, it means he's going to start wrestling him, and he's going to just hold him there, and it's not going to be fun. And I can't remember who mentioned he's taking the Curtis Blades way of saying it, because when Curtis Blades fought Alexander Volkov, he said, hey, if you're looking for a striking war, don't tune into the main event. So I would like to see DC kind of quote Curtis Blades and tweet that one out, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think Daniel Cormier is kind of determined to get this win, and I think that's why I lean towards him here, because I don't think that there's any way he doesn't take this fight to the ground. And even if you're talking about the striking, they were going kind of tit for tat with the strikes in the second fight. When you watch the first few rounds, Daniel Cormier, even not talking about the striking and the takedowns, there wasn't really any dominant strikes landed by either fighter, against obviously aside of the knockouts for each ones, other than, of course, Stipe Miocic's body shots. As you mentioned, there is no way Daniel Cormier is not expecting that to play a factor. I think Stipe is going to be going to the legs. He's going to be going to the body for the first few rounds, kind of getting that head start in a way. And I also think that those are going to kind of lead openings for Daniel Cormier to kind of get to the clinch. land off a few strikes, because I do think he's going to strike with him. I don't think he's just going to go for a takedown second this fight starts. But I do think he gets the fight to the ground. I do think he's able to win the striking exchanges. And I look at where these guys are vulnerable. And that's my thing. That is what I talk about when it comes down to fights. And with good reason, because a lot of these times where you take fighters who are vulnerable, that tends to be where the other fighter wants to take them. And DC, we've seen him knocked out once. Obviously, of course, the Jones knockout, but we know pictogram and whatever you want to call it. We've seen DC knocked out, and that was opened up by a body shot. He had to worry about the body shot. It really hurt him. It landed the shots up top and brought him down. Whereas in Stipe Miocic, when DC knocked out Stipe Miocic, it was in the clinch, and it was kind of just a bad mistake. The thing I've learned from one of my coaches about, and I don't train, it's just from coaches that I've talked to about MMA, which I've done before. But talking to one of my coaches, he mentioned that the main thing you do when you're in the clinch and you're leaving the clinch is you do one of two things. You either throw a strike or you block. And Stipe didn't do either. He had his hand down by his hip and got caught by DC. The chances of that happening again, sure, they're low, but it's a mistake. It's a fight IQ mistake, and sure, fighters make it every now and then. But Daniel Cormier's fight IQ is absolutely amazing. This dude is not 22-2 for no reason. As you mentioned, not very many people can kind of handle the wrestling of Daniel Cormier, and I think that's why it's my lock for the fight. So many factors lead into this, but as I mentioned, the vulnerability. Stipe Miocic, we've seen him knocked out before standing up. We've seen Cormier handle Stipe on the ground. We haven't seen Stipe Miocic kind of catch DC lacking outside of the body shots, which is an easy fix-up. Obviously, it's not like crazily easy, but it's something that obviously DC is going to be wary of, which you could say he wasn't in the second fight. So, passing into the UFC calculator, 76.2% for Daniel Cormier. Now, I want to mention this, even though I shouldn't be kind of talking crap about myself in a way, but my last two locks, 2 cards in a row, Edmund Shabazian, knocked out. Last card, Wellington Turman, knocked out cold. Oh, my goodness. So, I'm leaving it to Daniel Cormier to not make it the third straight fight where my lock gets knocked out cold. Hopefully it doesn't happen, but hey, I am a huge Stipe Miocic fan. I love Stipe, and I know it's kind of weird to say that even though I was just picking his whole game apart, but I just don't see him being able to beat Cormier here. I think Cormier is ready. He wants to ride off in the sunset with a title, and I think he's going to be able to get it done. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a submission. Talking about the wrestling game, getting into the ground, I wouldn't be surprised at all. So I do think he either gets a submission or a decision. For whatever reason, I don't think there's a KO in this fight. I think Cormier is going to be able to submit him. So yeah, I'll go with a submission in the third round for Cormier. Hey, I wanted to ask this to you, Zach. Do you think the small cage is going to play a factor?
I think it absolutely is going to play a factor, because if we know one thing so far, small cage favors who? Grapplers. Absolutely. And if DC uses his wrestling, he can get Stipe up against the fence faster, land those takedowns.
Hey, we're just saying, as Eddie Bravo says, and I'm killing it with the quotes. You just got to look into it. You got to look into it. And if you look into the stats of the small cage, it definitely favors the grappler. So we're going to go with Cormier here. We got a unanimous for the main event of the evening. So we want to know what you guys think. Make sure you guys are leaving your comments, letting us know what you got. This is a banger of a fight, one of the greatest heavyweight fights of all time. Not as Zach mentioned, I don't think it's by any means. But this is a very, very great fight for UFC 252's main event. Really, really excited for this one. I know you guys are too. So please leave us your comments. Let us know what you guys think. Show your love on the videos. We haven't been getting love. We've been getting so much hate. Stop hating on me, guys. Please comment and let us know what you guys thought. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Make sure you guys are checking out the other Fight Pick videos. If you're watching this one and you only watch this one, shame. Check out the other Fight Pick videos. You can start betting and making some money if you buy into what we do. All I do is study tape, and I'm sure Zach would say the same. So we will leave it there. Make sure you guys check out the other Fight Pick videos and enjoy the fights.